Hey there. Let's talk about making those big, messy, complicated decisions a little, well, less messy. Today, we're diving into an amazing tool that can bring a ton of clarity when you need it most.
You know that feeling, right? When you're staring at a huge choice with all these different paths you could take, and every single one is packed with what-ifs and uncertainty, it can be totally paralyzing.
But imagine for a second, what if you could take all of that swirling complexity in your head and just lay it all out? Actually draw a map that shows you exactly where each choice could lead.
Well, you can, and that's exactly what this is. It's called a decision tree. Think of it as a roadmap for your choices, turning a complicated jumble of options and outcomes into a super clear, logical picture so you can navigate forward with some real confidence. So, how does this thing actually work? Let's get into it. So, here's the game plan. We'll kick off with what a decision tree actually is. Then we'll look at the basic shapes you need to know. The fun part is next. We're going to build one together step by step. We'll briefly touch on a couple different types of trees, and then we'll wrap up with why this is basically a new superpower for you.
At its heart, a decision tree is just a diagram that looks kind of like a tree tipped on its side. You start with one main decision, that's the trunk, and then you branch out to show all the different choices you could make and what might happen because of those choices. It's all about making something that feels abstract, totally concrete.
Okay, to read one of these maps, or even build your own, you just need to know the language. And don't worry, it's super simple. We're just talking about a few basic shapes. It's like learning the ABCs of decision-making.
First up, we've got the square. This is a decision node. Anytime you see a square, it's a point where you have to make a choice. You're in the driver's seat. You get to decide which path to take. Simple as that.
Next, you've got the circle. This is a chance node, and it represents a moment of uncertainty. It's for all the stuff you can't control, things like what the market's going to do or what your competitors are up to. It's where luck or probability enters the picture.
And finally, the triangle. This is the end of the line. It's called a terminal node, and it marks the final outcome of any given path. After all the choices and all the chance events, this is the destination. This is where you see the final result or the payoff.
All right, enough theory. The best way to really get this is to get our hands dirty and actually build one. So, we're going to walk through a classic business scenario and map the whole thing out together.
Okay, so put on your consultant hat. You're working for a company called Really Big Ideas, Inc. Love that name. And they've hired you to figure out which new product they should sink their time and money into. The pressure's on.
We're going to do this in 6 clear steps. We'll start by defining the core decision and mapping out the options. Then comes the really cool part. We'll bring in some data to figure out the probabilities and payoffs. After that, we do a tiny bit of math. And, believe it or not, the best choice will pop right out at us.
Okay, let's start sketching this out. We begin with a square. That's our decision node. From that square, we draw 3 main branches for our 3 choices. Develop a new smoke and fire detector, develop a motion detector, or do nothing at all.
So this is where you might be thinking, hold on a minute. Each of these products could be a huge success or a total flop. How in the world do we assign actual numbers to that? We can't just pull them out of thin air, right?
Exactly. You don't guess. You become a detective. You gather clues from everywhere you can, looking at historical data from similar projects, doing solid market research, talking to experts. But one of your most powerful tools is running a survey. And to get data you can trust, you have to survey what's called a representative sample.
So, what is a representative sample? It's basically a mini version of the entire group of people you're interested in. If your potential customers are diverse in age, gender, and location, then the small group you survey has to be too. This is absolutely critical for avoiding bias and getting numbers you can actually count on. Okay, let's put that into action on our tree. After each product branch, we add our chance nodes, the circles. From each circle, we draw 2 more little branches, one for success and one for failure. And now, using our research, we add the numbers. Let's say our survey showed a 50% chance of success for the smoke detector, and our market research suggests an 80% chance for the motion detector. Now we can add those probabilities along with the financial payoffs for each outcome.
So now our tree is all filled out. But how do we compare the branches? For that, we calculate something called the expected value, or EV. It might sound a little technical, but the idea is really simple. It's the average payoff of a path, taking into account the odds of both winning and losing. It boils everything down to a single number.
Let's look at the math real quick. For the smoke detector, we take the massive payoff from a success times its 50% probability and add that to the loss we take from a failure times its 50% probability. That gives us an expected value of $400,000. We do the same calculation for the motion detector, and it comes out to an EV of $310,000.
And just like that, the choice becomes crystal clear. The smoke and fire detector has the higher expected value. That means, on average, it's the most profitable bet. Look at what you just did. We took a complex, uncertain problem and used data to find a single logical answer. How cool is that?
Now, our example was all about dollars and cents, but these trees are incredibly flexible. You can actually use them to answer all kinds of different questions. And that leads us to a couple of different types of trees you might see out there.
The two most common types are classification and regression. A classification tree is all about sorting things into categories. Think, is this email spam or not spam? The answer is a clean label. A regression tree, on the other hand, is for predicting a specific number, like, what will the final sale price of this house be? The answer isn't a category, it's a number on a spectrum.
So at this point, you've seen how to build a decision tree and how to analyze it. You basically have a new decision-making superpower. So let's do a quick recap of why this simple tool is so powerful.
First off, they're graphic, which makes it so much easier to see and understand a complex problem. They're efficient. You can compare totally different scenarios at a single glance. They're also incredibly revealing, since they combine costs, potential payoffs, and all that uncertainty into one single number. And what's great is they're complementary, meaning they work perfectly with other planning tools you might already be using.
So, I'll leave you with a question to chew on. From a big career move to a smaller personal project, what's one decision in your life right now that could use a little more clarity? What's one choice you could map out with a decision tree today?